So I arrived into Houston, and there was a girl who I met at South by Southwest in Austin, Melissa, who manages this band called The Suffers out of Houston. And she's like, again, totally different culture than me. Like, I'm from Canada, I listen to like indie rock, like, you know, that kind of music. She's like soul, hip hop. She listens to a lot of stuff, but just very different backgrounds, right? She's like a southern girl, right? And so I hung out with her in Houston that night. We went to this mall called the Galleria, which is like this famous mall in Houston. And this club, I can't remember the name of it. I think I wrote it down here. Like what did I say it was? The Flat. That's right. And it was Frankie Knuckles' night, because Frankie Knuckles passed away. He was a serious house producer that even Obama wrote a letter to when he passed away. Ta-da! So I went and chilled out there, kicked it with Melissa. She might go down to South America at some point. We might meet up down there. We'll see how it's going. But she's a super cool girl. So then I stayed in Houston that night. I think it was like Saturday or Sunday maybe. And then the next day was really crappy weather, so I kind of kicked it around, went to Starbucks, did some research on where I wanted to go to next. And from Houston, then I went up on to the National Forest, which is East Texas, like East Texas. And first forest I went to was Sam Houston. And that forest had the most amazing trails I've ever seen in my life for running. Again, still total hog and alligator country. So when I got up there, it was kind of rainy weather at night, so I slept in my car. And that national forest week became really weird. It became kind of like more like a tourist thing, where I was like, I gotta hit all these spots, because I knew I only had like a week of good weather in that area, and there's all these things I wanted to see. So it ended up being like less of the like, oh man, let's just expand, you know, and more of like, gotta hit this. And also I found out like about hiking trails. I was like, you could research on the US Forestry site which spots had hiking trails. So I was like, oh, I gotta go hiking, this trail, I gotta hike it. So it was more of that kind of like checklist mentality. Still amazing. But when I got to the forests, I was like, man, I forgot how much I love forests. Like, it was unbelievable. But again, sort of like the same thing with the ocean. After a while being in the forest with trees like Canadian tall trees, like it looked like Canada or Scandinavia or something. I'll show you some visuals. Unbelievable. You in the forest are more in your land. It's not like being in the ocean, which that's not your land. It's a foreign language. You can't understand it, and it takes over everything. You're in your land. You can walk. You're rolling, but you're tucked in, so you can't really see too much. You're always kind of like not vulnerable to being scared, but you're not a dominant presence on the landscape. Like in the desert, you are, because it's like, whoo, or in the plains, you are actually, because it's, you know, open, right? So forest is really cool, but I realized, again, it's not my spot, but when I first arrived, I was like, oh my god, this is so good. So like I said, I slept in my car, the first spot, because it was kind of rainy that night. I was only going to be there 2 nights, so no point setting up a tent. And I was right by these dirt bike, like off-roading kind of vehicle trails, which, like I said, best running trails ever. There's like 75 miles of trails there in that spot, Kelly's Campground in Sam Houston National Forest, which is free, again. So first day I walked a bunch of trails, came across this crazy school bus type thing in the backwoods, like tucked away. The next day I ran a bunch of trails. It was genius. Met some people from Oklahoma. That was cool too. And then I went on to Davy Crockett Forest, which is up north more. And there's a spot called Netche's I don't know how to pronounce it, Netche's Bluff Overlook. And that was a bit tough to find, but I found it, and it was up top. So at that spot I was going to be there for 2 nights, and I wasn't worried about alligators, because it was on a bluff. Alligators like to be kind of down in the waterland, and I wasn't really worried about hogs either, just the way it looked. It was kind of like it seemed drier up on that bluff. So I used my tent. It was a great spot. No one else was there. Had it all to myself. It was like unbelievable. And there's a trail there called the National Foresty Hiking Trail. It's like 20 miles. So I did the first day I was there, I think I walked like 10 miles on it to the halfway point until there was like this makeshift campsite, and I kind of made my way back. Amazing stuff. I got some footage of that too. And when I was walking on that trail, I ran into these 2 dudes with AK-47s, and apparently they were like protecting themselves or hunting wild hogs. So they're like, you be careful. And they told me there was alligators too, and so I was just like, oh god. But you know, do my thing. So I made it through that, and I made it back,